anybody else is having Wi-Fi issues right now, but I seem to be dropping a lot more today all of a sudden than I have been in the past few weeks. Maybe just because everybody's home now, not sure. Let's just, since we've taken a minute to stop, I'm just going to see if there's any comments or any chats. Okay, got it. So, in terms of Zoom, let's jump right back into it. If you're running a large Zoom call, I think it's really important to set some rules and expectations when you start. So, coming back to the idea of asking people to mute or use the hands up feature, which can be very useful with using the hands up feature, and even when you're starting a Zoom call. So, the reason I didn't see Dan raise his hand is that I hadn't actually opened my screen into a multi view. I was only seeing the top 3 people, and Zoom decides that from the who I'm going to see. I hadn't opened it up for seeing everyone's faces on screen. So when I'm not doing that as a facilitator, actually, I missed Dan's question, and Namisha very kindly then said, let's let Dan introduce himself. So some of those rules are also for yourself in terms of when do you want to go into screen time? How do you want people to put things into chat? When do you want people to mute? Now, in terms of speaking, everyone can be very comfortable today and come onto camera if you want to. But if you are using these webinars or networking opportunities to build relationships and get to know people, I think it is important to try to be on camera when you get comfortable, because again, we're building relationships with people. It's very difficult for me to start to build a relationship if I'm only seeing a phone number. So when you're comfortable, try to be on camera. If you have questions, I think it is very nice, put it into the chat box or raise your hand so you're not interrupting the flow. Of course, today, I thank you guys for letting me know that you couldn't see my screen. Now, in terms of messaging, you can private or group messaging. So some of these things I'm going to show and drop in some of the etiquette bits. Be aware if you're messaging unrelated to the topic of what everyone else is talking about. So I've been in a couple of Zoom calls lately where there's a conversation going in the chat that has nothing to do with what the speaker is talking about. Now, to a certain extent, maybe the speaker can then take a look at that being like, I'm boring people. But on the other side, if you're having kind of a side conversation, not paying attention to the speaker, how does that reflect on you as well, right? And you and the other person. Are you taking away from someone else's experience? And the same thing with multitasking. So let's just say you are doing something else, or someone else asks you a question, you may actually get caught out. I actually have been seeing more multitasking going on, things that we wouldn't do in a normal meeting. Whether this is fake news or a faux pas, someone said to me, someone went to the bathroom and forgot to mute themselves. So everybody in the meeting was getting to hear, I'm sure, what the speaker didn't want them to hear, right? Or the group to hear. So if we are multitasking, I know I'll say it myself. The other day, I got a phone call because one of my virtual networking things went a bit longer. Again, another tip is to run to time, because people are allocating right now certain sets of time. I know I've been doing a lot of back to back. Every hour almost, I've got something else going on. So if things are going over, I'm either having to leave and miss out on some of the content I came for, or I'm muting myself and like jumping on a call or doing something else. And again, someone might ask me a question and I might get caught out that I'm not actually paying attention. So does anybody, if you have any questions on how to use Zoom, there is some of the cool new features that I'm even learning how to use is the breakout rooms. So in terms of, for example, tonight we could have done a webinar where we have everyone present the topics, and then go into breakout rooms if you want to talk to Namisha more about remote teams, or if you want to talk to Tiaba more about well-being. So Zoom actually has that feature where you can break out into smaller rooms. And I'm sure that I will do another webinar soon where we use that feature in case everyone wants to learn how to use it. Slack. So how many people know what Slack is, or actually know how to use it? So Slack essentially is a group communication tool. I can show you guys my Slack as well if I think I've closed it, but this is an actual photo of my Slack channels. So Slack is it's kind of like what I called WhatsApp on steroids. It's got the ability to create channels for different types of communication within your teams. I think Slack is a very, very good tool for small teams that want to talk about problems in real time and troubleshoot. But here's some of the tips and tricks I would give you on Slack. So Slack, organize your Slack channels and make sure that they have a purpose. And even when I was first learning how to use Slack, I would kind of make a Slack channel for things that were too small to have their own Slack channel, and then put things in there or not put things into the right channel. So using the channels effectively to put in the content that is relevant. My one big thing with Slack is as it gets bigger and as you use it for more people, your rules and your structure does have to actually be adhered to, which means you need to remind people that, hey, let's move that conversation back to the appropriate channel. We have a channel called General and we have a channel called Daily Updates. And what I hadn't done in the early days is really define what each of those channels meant. For us, general chat would be like, hi guys, I'm here today, or I'm going to lunch, or just general kind of chit chat. Whereas the daily updates was about what work everybody was achieving each and every day. So it was very much about them giving me visibility because my tech team is remote, what they were doing. And that was the only way I could really understand. I mean, today my mobile team lead, he put in the stories he'd worked on today. So I know what to check tonight. It keeps me structured and it keeps me visible with them. In terms of posting, there's a thing called not bloating your channel or Slack bombing your community. So putting, all related text of a post into one text. If you're on WhatsApp, and I'll use some of this as WhatsApp, where someone kind of starts typing little bits of what they could have put in one post, right? And like, hey, what's up? How are you? Putting that line after line, especially in a group chat. Well, you're pinging people, some of these large group chats each and every time you're sending that message. And the same thing can happen in Slack, is that conversation, which should be more organized in one kind of text box, gets broken up. Now in Slack, you can also pin a post. So if there was something really important that you wanted to share, if you've broken it up in multiple lines or threads, it's going to be difficult to do that. So on the line on threads, actually probably would be useful if I opened my Slack. But in terms of threads are almost like in a forum. If you're having a topic, let's say we're talking about remote teams, you could then respond to just that particular chat, and it would create a thread of the conversation. See, I'm sorry, my internet is working really slow today. Otherwise, this Slack wouldn't be so slow to load. But I'm going to move on. So the other thing about using Slack or any of these communication platforms is using the other tools you need for the right things. Slack isn't a vault. It's very difficult for me, even though I only use it for a team of 6, to find things that people have shared. So, someone might drop in a document for our design work, and then I have to go back and try to find it in the design chat. It is in my design chat, but I still have to struggle on where to find it, rather than putting everything into a Google Drive or a Dropbox and connecting the two. And sometimes picking up the phone and just having a quick 2-minute conversation might save 50 lines of chat in a Slack channel, which not everybody else needs to see, but I don't know how many times I've tried to have a communication with my tech guys that probably could have been saved a very long conversation where we actually still didn't achieve what we needed to achieve because we were both talking about different things. And text, again, we interpret text differently in chat. So picking up that phone. Using mentions is very carefully with a clear call to action. So if you're going to use the user mentions in any of these platforms, making sure that if I'm calling, Tiaba out, I'm actually saying what I need her to do, what that call to action is, rather than having her come to try to read the conversation and find the context for herself. And then using the do not disturb can be really great when you don't want to be interrupted. And also in terms of, if you're in that kind of in the zone, and a lot of my analogies are from my tech team, they always say, when I'm starting to code, I need to just be left alone and get my coding done, and I don't want to be interrupted. By putting up the do not disturb, I know that they're in the zone and they don't want to be interrupted, but they won't be, because Slack will stop that message to go to them. So it's called snooze. At the same time, I also know not to expect an answer right away. So a lot of times, I think today, a lot of these tools are so much, about real-time communication, remote communication. Sometimes we need to be able to tell people when we're not going to respond in real time, and when we are going to have that, you might need to wait for a little bit of time for me to come back to you, other than me keep messaging to be like, are you here? Where'd you go? Right. So, and again, I can be quite demanding on my team and be like, I really need you to get this done right now. If they would put on snooze, I would understand that they're not even at the computer. Some of this stuff can be translated to WhatsApp, but I'm going to move on, because with WhatsApp, I think we're learning quite a lot of etiquette with WhatsApp. The biggest rule I would say with WhatsApp is, if you do run a large group, I would say stay on point for the group. And I'll give an example and try to maybe share that tip. So I'm in a part of this community called the Happy People. And the Happy People came together a couple of years ago just to bring interesting entrepreneurial social people together. It is now 72 WhatsApp groups. And the people that run it, especially one of them, he's very aware of what each channel was set up for and tries to guide people to talk in the right channel. One of the groups is a Happy People social group. And right now, actually, it's been in virtual lockdown because the whole objective of that group is for people to share what they're doing in real life with other people. And right now, of course, with COVID, everybody's, wanting to chat and talk and panic. But he shut that group down so that that doesn't become another place for that conversation, and started another chat to specifically talk about COVID because, a lot of us are probably in lots of these groups and getting bombarded in different places. So I thought that was really actually kind of great of him to shut down that group for now and say, look, when we can go back and meet in real life, which is the purpose of this group, we will bring it back. He did the same thing with another group, which is all about workplace, and so on the weekends, he's putting it into virtual lockdown as well. So the other way to use WhatsApp is rather than using it in a group function, using the broadcast. I have a lot of friends now who are using WhatsApp groups to organize birthday parties or social events without even knowing that the people in the group are already RSVP'd yes. So if they had used a broadcast message, they could even just say, let me know if you're coming, and then add the people who are actually coming into the group so that all the conversation is relevant. Because in a social setting, I sometimes feel bad leaving a group of one of my friends, social like birthday parties. So being interested, and also understanding that not all of us use these tools in the same way. It can be a bit tricky because some people love WhatsApp, want to do everything on WhatsApp, and other people do want it to be a bit more structured. I'm going to do, I'm going to skip Asana. I'm happy to share these slides because again, I don't think I can fit everything into the 10-minute time I gave everyone. We're going to do quickly Google, and I'm happy to share these or talk to anybody about the tools. But let's do Google and Dropbox, and then we'll move on to Nimisha's team, remote teams section. So in terms of Google and Google Drive and Dropbox, very similar tools. I actually use both, and that's probably the first trip I would say is I need to consolidate myself. I don't know why we have started to use Dropbox because that's what my husband, my co-founder liked. And then I'm using Google Excel sheets to do a lot of organization. I'm using a lot of Google Docs. And so now all of a sudden we actually have documents in 2 different places, which is disorganized for the organization and also not really making everything easily accessible for everyone. Structuring and identifying the folders after projects, not people, making things super easy to find is definitely a good etiquette in these groups, because if you haven't called something the right thing, it's going to make it very difficult for somebody else to find it. Now, deletion, asking before you delete shared files. Some of us think that we can delete a file and it's only deleting on our own computer. It's actually deleting for the team. So you have to take the whole folder out of your Dropbox, because remember, these things are shared. And again, I'm not going to go into detail, but I'm happy to show anyone what I physically mean about these things afterwards if you're using these tools. Disconnecting or not deleting, very similar. So that's the whole concept of disconnecting that folder from your own cloud, not from everyone else's. Remembering that when we are sharing these spaces, they're not just for us. We are sharing this with our teams or with, whoever else we might sharing with. So the etiquette of large files as well. How many times have I made the mistake of sharing a Google Excel or a link to a file, but not making it accessible or editable. And so that's blocking my team from actually doing something on that file, right? I need to make sure that they can access the file when they need to, and also be able to edit it. So one of the things is you can actually you can share your link if it's not like a private thing, make it very public very easily, and then it makes it accessible to your team when they need it. The other, I think, great tool with Google and especially Google, I know Dropbox does it as well, is that whole real-time working, but I'll let Nimisha talk about that a little bit more. The one cool thing that I learned today that I didn't even know about was I was kind of looking at how else I could use Google Drive was if you connect your Google Drive to your Gmail, and again, this is a Gmail user thing, you can search your search bar in your inbox and it will search your Google Drive, making you not even have to leave your inbox and try to find and pull up the relevant document. So Dropbox actually is developing a lot of real-time things. They have Microsoft, like you can create a document in Microsoft Word now and Excel, and they've got that whole thing linked up. So it is a really cool it makes it a lot easier. But I think the etiquette with Dropbox and Google Drive and sharing is making sure that you're actually allowing people to access the things they need to access, by setting the permissions properly. Facebook and LinkedIn, I'm going to have to come back to in another session, because they can have their whole own kind of talk. And we can talk about that in another webinar session. So, the things that I would have touched upon are profile, how to connect with people, what type of messages to send. And I think the one thing I'll leave you with before I pass it over is, not direct selling to people as soon as you connect with them, right? The whole connect, they connect. Hey, did you know that I do this and I could really help you with it? That's the fastest way to get me to unconnect with you, because you have not even tried to build a relationship with me. You're directly selling at me. You have no idea if it's relevant. Some people are doing this very well, LinkedIn social selling, and I'm going to learn how to do it better myself as well. But that whole direct sell thing, or being hit on LinkedIn, which I think is happening to a lot more of us. So, LinkedIn is a professional site, not a dating site. With that note, we're going to turn it over to Namisha to go into remote team management.
Okay, thank you, Susan. That was really, really informative. So before I jump into my content, I kind of wanted to get a feel from everybody who's in the room. So, if you're on camera, feel free to raise your hand, or if you don't want to be on camera, just type it in the chat box. But I want to know, considering what's going on in our current climate of most of us working from home, how many of you are actually managing teams from home? You got Susan, Tayaba, anybody else? Debbie, Speaker Insight. Okay, Pilly, no worries. We'll make sure that you get to some work soon. But okay, so we've got a good proportion of people who are actually managing teams from home, right? And just so that I get an understanding of where you have come from, how many for how many of you is this quite a new concept to manage people without actually physically seeing them? Okay, so it sounds like most people are familiar. Okay, great. So, what I'm here to sort of share with you guys today is not necessarily talk about how you should manage remote teams, considering that most of you are already doing that really well, but it's to talk about how can you get the most efficient use out of your teams, given that you're all in disparate places, right? So, from my experience working as a consultant, we're sort of mandated by big corporates to really drive value out of the people that we work with, regardless of what geography we're in. And for the most part, that's usually easy because of all the tools that Susan has, so nicely explained. But some of the things that we predominantly miss when we are being remote teams is exactly that, the ability to build culture and build cohesion between us, right? So I'm a big believer that you know organizations fundamentally grow, whether you're small, medium, or big, based on how well you culturally mold together as a team and how you work together. And there's a general consensus that if you're not physically amongst each other, or you don't have those regular touch points, sometimes that can go awry. So actually, before I dive into the core of my content, how many of you, prior to this whole remote working crisis, even if you had teams, would actually have some sort of physical touch point with them, whether it was once a week or once a month? So just feel free to raise your hands or just type in the chat box. Great. Right. So for the most part of you, you do have that opportunity to at least have some sort of physical interaction with them. And I think that's really important, because it's just like it's just like any adage that we have about us as people. We're all social beings, right? So even right now, we're all getting frustrated. I know I am, like, just sitting at home. And even though I'm speaking to all of you and seeing all your faces on a screen, I'm craving for like a hug or some sort of connection, or like talking to people or sitting with them or having a coffee. And these are some of the things that in this current situation we are definitely missing. But those are the places where we tend to lose out on team cohesion, because we don't have that social aspect of things. So what I'm here to speak to you about today is, all of you are team managers, and it's like, how are we going to get the most efficient use out of our team given the current situation? Because the most important thing, and Susan will kind of speak to this a little bit as well, is that in my role as someone who kind of works at the future proofing of business, I'm also very aware that at some point in the future, when artificial intelligence becomes really dominant and when a lot of what we do in our role at the moment is going to be done by machines or robots or stuff like that, there's going to be this release in capacity within ourselves as people, but also within our talent, which means that we're not going to be utilized just for the jobs that we do, but we're going to have to be utilized for the talent that we bring to the table. And this is part and parcel of what I'm talking about, that this is such a golden opportunity for us to realize that when we're managing remote teams in this virtual space, we're not necessarily just trying to make them do a job. We have to understand the length and breadth of what they're able to bring to us, because what we don't realize is when we don't physically travel to a place for a job, we're releasing a lot of capacity in our resource pool to be able to do more things, right? Like, how many of you are feeling like you have way more free time right now because you're at home than if you were actually traveling to a place or not? Like, I definitely have way more free time. I'm like, oh my God, I'm like doing my work in 6 hours instead of like 8 because I'm not traveling to client sites as often as I would. And so that's releasing a lot of my own free capacity. Okay, not got way more free time right now, so much pivoting. Yeah, I mean that's true, but but that's what I'm trying to identify for you, is that because you have this free time, you're utilizing it in a different way. So that's what I'm here to talk about, is that if you're utilizing it in a different way to pivot your business, how much of that time are you taking to also understand the capacity and talent of your team so that they can support you in that process? Because we're very wired as managers to utilize our team just by job function or role, and this is truly a big invitation for us to look at every single individual who is a part of our team and understand they're not just my developer. Maybe they're really good at, graphics or design, or maybe they're just great at engaging people, or maybe they're just really a great advocate for our business and could they do some business development. So one of the biggest lessons around managing remote teams, and also to sort of future proof your business, is starting to look at your resources or the people within your teams, not just for the job function that they're there to do, but also how much more of the breadth and length of their talent can support you in pivoting or growing your business. And I think this is really important because I remember like 6 months ago, I read this really interesting article on BBC, and I still think that the documentary is on iPlayer about how AI is going to change our world. And I'm an investor in AI, so I have that really interesting bird's eye and insider view on how is it going to change our world. And for some of us, it's quite scary, but ultimately the biggest thing that I've seen is that it's going to release a lot of time in our space, in our, in the things that we do on a day-to-day basis. That means that we're going to have more capacity to be more creative. That article actually referenced the fact that creative industries are going to grow more because of the prevalence of AI, because all of a sudden we're not asked to do mundane or basic tasks. We're actually flexing ourselves to, be therefore applying more of our talent and creativity into different spaces. So my lesson number one for today, when you're managing remote teams and trying to take the most of this opportunity that we're in right now, is to take a moment to reflect on every single person who works in your team, and to look at beyond their job function, what are they able to bring. And that should be fairly easy for you if you already have a rapport or a relationship with this person, because you've got to know them on a personal basis. The second thing, and the most important thing that I think is really important at this time, is something that's not really closely addressed, and that is, and I would like Tayaba to join in on this subject as I bring it up, is to have an approach on how you're going to deal with mental health challenges. And I know a lot of people don't talk about this, but you have to realize we're in a tricky time, and a lot of people, we're in this hybrid situation where some people are like me who have been very used to working in this sort of environment, but for some people this is extremely new, and they don't know how to cope with it. You know, they, even I've been doing this for 5 years, and like on Monday morning I was like, oh, I have too much free time, I don't know what to do with myself, right? So it happens to all of us, and I think it's really important as responsible business people that we really consider, okay, as do we have some sort of approach to dealing with mental health challenges that are going to come up within our workforce as a result of the way, you know, life has effectively changed. So even if it's not an eloquent or, you know, a robustly legal approach, just sit down and have a think about, okay, if an employee is going to raise some sort of concerns, do I have a way of dealing with it? Do I have the right frameworks in place to support them? And have I actually thought about, as a business, how am I going to support them through this journey? And if I can't, then how else can I do that? And I really would want to let Teaba kind of chime in on that, because I know you've kind of been privy to so much of the challenges that people are facing right now because of this whole adjustment. And I'd really love to hear from you just on this specific point. How are certain businesses dealing with that? You're still on mute.
Yeah,
There you
I just dropped my signal, just dropped out. I've just got back and I'm tethered on my iPhone, so I hope this is going to work. I missed the last bit of your chat, but yes, basically I'm just going to share my screen and I'll just start my presentation. There's people are dealing with this in a very different way. Different businesses are you know, coping in different ways, and I'm working with an investment firm very closely and a construction company very closely. And yeah, you know, they're finding their way through it, but I'm supporting them a lot with these kind of talks. And I think, Namisha, it'd be really helpful for some of those HR teams to really listen to what you've got to have said today. Anyway, I'll get started. And basically, some of the tips that I'm going to go through today are things that you probably already are familiar with if a lot of you work from home, but I'll just run through and we'll see how we go. So working from home is it's not the easiest thing at the best of times, and we've got distractions and stuff going on, but now in this enforced environment it can be really, really difficult. And for those people who aren't used to working from home and not having that contact with the outside world, it's a challenge for us. And it's interesting that Susan said it's like, you know, so you mentioned something about it being like Slack was like WhatsApp on steroids. Well, I think the way that we're working from home right now, it is like working from home but on steroids, with no outside contact, with our entire families all there, the Wi-Fi being really heavily overutilized, which is probably why mine just dropped out. So one of the first things I want to say to people is to forgive yourself, because it is a difficult time. You know, if you are really having a hard time or losing your temper or not being so kind to your children or eating that extra chocolate, forgive yourself, because honestly, it is a tough time. It's unprecedented, as we keep hearing. So letting that go is a really good place to start. Rome wasn't built in 4 weeks. And, you know, most of the people I've been speaking to have been at home for at least, you know, the longest time of 4 weeks. So give yourself a chance and definitely be kind. My second point is review and reflect. You know, you've got the whole family in the house, you know, what's working and what's not working. Have a look at what's working. And I really suggest that you write this down, write down what is working. And conversely, also write down what is not working and have a look at that, get it out of your head onto a piece of paper. What can I do about it? Can I actually do anything about these things that aren't working? If you can, then do it. If you can't, then let it go, because there's very little you're going to be able to do about it at this time. You need to control what you can. My next point is have a bit of a plan. And what do I mean by this? I've got kids at home. You know, I'm actually staying with my ex, which is interesting. And also that there's a lot of stuff going on, homeschooling. I'm running my business, more cooking, more cleaning, you know, lots of other things that I wouldn't normally be doing. So I sat down and did this really, really strict minute by minute timetable. That doesn't work. We have to be malleable. We have to review daily. If you've got somebody else in your house that's a professional who you're not used to being there, or you're not working, then, you know, really sit down and work out, what do they need? What do you need? How can you make it work? How can you make the Wi-Fi work? How can you make your day work? Who's looking after who? The children and things like that. I'm not going to talk too much about the environment because Jill is going to talk about that afterwards, but, you know, having a good Wi-Fi, making sure you've got headphones, sitting up properly, checking the height of your computer, and all of those things obviously make it much more comfortably, aesthetically, but also practically as well. Finally, taking lots of breaks, lots of regular breaks. If you're not used to working from home, and even if you are, this is a very good practice. It really increases your concentration to have little breaks throughout the day. I often tell people that when you have a break, just have a stretch as well, lift up your arms and drop them down to above your toes, and just release all those vertebrae in your back, which have been stacked on top of each other for so long. A lot of people that I'm working with are basically saying that they are sitting down for a lot longer, forgetting to get up, forgetting to get cups of tea. So please try and remember to do that. If you can stand as well, while working, that's also really good. Walking around with if you've got wireless headphones, that can be a really good way as well to keep things moving along in the body. Real life, managing distractions and communication. So I mentioned it earlier, we can't look ourselves away for 3 months. So we have to really communicate. When you're in a household with people that, your family or partner or whoever that you don't normally spend all that time with, it's amazing how little tiny things can start to get really irritating. So you need to really be honest with each other and talk to each other and talk to your family about what you need and what you need to really make it work. Talked about the Wi-Fi, look at all the options. Can your service provider give you a bit more signal? Is there a better hub that you can get? Could you buy a booster on the internet? Can you get more data on your phone so that if you do have a Wi-Fi crash like I just did, you can tether it to your phone and have that endless amount of data? Rethink your day as well. People with families and everyone at home, is there a way that you can work out joining the 5 a.m. club, getting up in the morning, doing all your work in the morning so you have that quiet time if that's what you need, and then you can actually dedicate some time to your family? Can you share the childcare? Single parents, I know the 5 a.m. club is really, really useful. Same goes for couples as well. Just talk to each other. Don't be competitive about whose job is more important. Communicate, schedule your needs, and plan your the next day daily. It's really important to plan daily. The next point is about harnessing your environment. You're at home. It's great. You can use your favorite mug. You can put on your favorite jumper. You can hug your children more. Lots of oxytocin is released when you hug your children or stroke your pets. So really utilize that. Remember, there are some positives right at your fingertips if you really want to use them. So to stay healthy and well, obviously, is really important. One of the things that I really like to talk about, and the thing that's the biggest problem in my practice, is stress and anxiety levels. So my big solution to stress and anxiety is micro changes. Micro changes are 1 to 5 rests for the body and or mind that you can do at any time of day. And the idea is it really brings down the nervous system from that fight or flight to a more calmer level. It's really important that you choose the right micro change for you. I've got a list on my app, but if I had more time, I'd go through a few. But breathing obviously is a really great one. 3, 4, 5 breathing. Breathe in for 3, hold for 4, and out for 5. And even if you did that for 1 minute, 3 or 4 times a day, you're bringing your nervous system down. And this has been really successful for my CEOs, senior execs. So choosing that right first change is really important as well, because if you're starting to do things that you wouldn't normally do or that just don't work for you, then you're not going to hold on and do them for any length of time. So sleep. Sleep is like a superpower. It's the single most best contributor to mental health and general wellness. We really need to get into a habit of getting to sleep on time. One of the things I won't have a chance to talk about today is about consistency, personal consistencies. And one of the things that I would recommend is to get to bed at the same time every day. Set yourself an alarm. Obviously, be realistic. If you go to bed at 1 a.m. normally, don't set it for 10 p.m. because you're never going to do it. But try to get into the habit of getting yourself to sleep. Those little consistencies throughout the day can really help you feel back in control when everything feels a little bit upside down. So we can see the functions of sleep. It's really, really good. And improving the natural defense of the body, very important at the moment, but also it can really help you maintain weight. We're not moving so much at the moment. We're definitely eating more. There are these 2 hunger hormones, which, has anybody heard of them? Leptin and ghrelin. Yeah. So basically, if you don't get enough sleep, leptin, which decreases your hunger, decreases your appetite, actually also decreases. And also ghrelin, which normally increases your hunger. Guess what? When you don't get enough sleep, ghrelin goes up, and that's why you feel more hungry in the morning. So by having a good night's sleep, you actually feel less hungry, and therefore you've got more of a chance to maintain your weight. So movement, I mean, there's lots of stuff about movement everywhere at the moment. It's really very important for us to move, considering we're probably going to be a lot more sedentary than we normally are. Lots of workouts out there, lots of free ones that are going on. There's Joe Wicks, which is a brilliant family one. I don't know, but if you've been doing that, I think it's a great workout. It's really hard. And even if you as an adult do that with your children every day, I bet you see improved muscle tone. I think Davina McCall's doing a 30-day free on her OYG, but 45 minutes of getting outside, if you can walk or run, even better, really going to positively impact your mental health. Get your heart rate moving, release some of those endorphins, all hugely important at the moment. And when it comes to nutrition now, there are so many diets, so many ways of eating. I'm not a big fan of any of those. What I would love people to really think about are these 4 very, very simple rules. Number 1, 70-30 or 80-20. The idea is that basically we can't eat like, saints the whole time. We have to have the joy in the food that we love. And if that comes with treats, make sure that that's there 20 to 30% of the time, and the rest of the time we want to eat nutritionally rich food, stuff that's really going to give us what we need for our bodies to function really well. I always encourage people to eat all the colors of the rainbow. They all have a different function. Dark fruits and vegetables are really good for full of antioxidants, greens for detoxing, orange for anti-cancer and skin and general health, immunity. So that, and then add a green to every meal. So if you have a green smoothie in the morning, you're doing really well. Otherwise, adding a green to every meal is really important to keep that fiber in the body, to keep that digestion functioning really, really well. The next one is adding a protein to your sugar. I love this because basically we all have, those little sugary treats every now and then, but actually adding a protein to it is going to lessen the effect of it negatively on your body. So when you have a piece of chocolate or a few pieces of chocolate, you have a sugar spike and your body is really struggling to process that sugar. So what it tends to happen is if it can't process it, what is left, the excess sugar, which is unprocessed by the body, turns to fat and generally gets stored around the middle of the body. By adding a protein to this, you basically change the chemical kind of content of that, and it actually slows down the release of the sugar. So you're kind of lowering the GL of it, and so therefore you don't have that tendency of it that turning to fat, or it definitely turns to fat much less, if not at all. So add a nut to your chocolate. If you're going to have a pudding, have it at the end of a protein-rich meal. For vegetarians and vegans, I've got lots of other suggestions as well. Is that a question? And also drink plenty of water. It's really important to drink plenty of water to make sure that digestion stays up to scratch. And also it helps with reasoning, thinking and decision making. Are we out of time? Or carry on? Got one more slide.
Yeah, sure. Finish it and then we should move on to Jill as well.
Okie dokes. So the very last thing is all about, I can't move on to mental health. So in this time, it's really important for us to find what I call our personal norms, that these are the things that we're going to need to really control our mental health. So find your calm, really think about what is it that switches you off. Is it, an episode of Friends? Is it having a bath? Is it going for a walk? What turns that mind off? What calms it down? Write them down, just put them in your phone or anywhere you like, because it's a really good place to remind yourself what you need when you are going through that bad time. Breathing, obviously all of the things that I've mentioned before. It's just about changing states and coming out of that busy head. Swapping hats is another really important one. If you have a separate space in your house, many of us look like we do, that's great, but at the end of the day you really need to switch your kind of entrepreneur, CEO, worker's hat, take it off and put on your dad hat, your mum hat, your husband, wife hat, whatever it is. And that's a really important thing to do. You don't want to be managing your partner. It doesn't help in this time particularly. So it's really important that we spend some time, and I always say take 5 minutes at the end of the day, transition time, to get out of our heads and into our hearts. And you can do this in a number of ways. Some people like to listen to music. Some people like to just go for a walk and just change their shoes, change their clothes. Literally, some people put their shoes on when they go to work and take them off when they come back. So all of those things really work, but it's really important to realize that, your day's over. and you can go back to being a mom or a husband, wife, etc. So try that for a 5-minute transition time. Connection, so important at this time, is to reach out to your friends that make you feel like you. What we're tending to do is we're looking after our family, we're checking in on people, we're talking to work colleagues, we're doing all those things, but really, really the thing that you really need to do to keep your mental health well is to reach out to the people where you can just have a laugh, be yourself. You're not fulfilling a role, you're not doing anything to help anyone, just having that sort of downtime for you, and to be really heard and understood. Maybe if you have a drink, there's lots of apps out there. And in the same way, distracting yourself from low mood is also really important, trying to use some of those strategies I mentioned earlier, trying to find what works for you, having a laugh with a mate, do it all in one. It'll be really good, heading for a walk or whatever works for you. My last point is about kindness, because as well as receiving support and giving support, it's really important that we allow ourselves to show kindness, because this releases much needed endorphins at this time. It also brings us back to a point of groundedness and gratefulness. So I have an exercise to leave you with, which is for 5 days, I want you to do something kind, something different every day. So if you make a cup of tea for someone one day, that's one thing. If you do the tea the next day, that doesn't count. You need to add something else, and just see how that makes you feel. Okay.
Thank you. I mean, I know that there's so much more value, and you just skipped the slide, but if anybody does want to join and get more from Yaba, go ahead.
Yeah, please do join my community. I've got kind of expanded, resources and tips and ideas, and also you can message me one-to-one. I'm very happy to talk to anyone. So drop me a line, email me, and I'll just add you to my community.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Yeva. Can we now have Jill?
Yeah, sure. Hi, can you hear me?
And Tiaba, do you mind share, please?
Sorry?
Tia, yeah.
Yeah?
Go for it.
Okay. Hi, guys. I'm so sorry. I'm joining a bit late. I had tech issues, as we do, unfortunately. So my laptop camera decided not to work. So I've joined from my phone. So it's not perfect. But anyway, we're here. I'm also, I loved everybody's speeches. Thank you so much. And I'm just very, very conscious that I've got a stuffed fox in the background on the wall there. So I think I need to sort out my etiquette for my Zoom, definitely. And my lighting's not great. But anyway, we're here. I don't know whether you did introductions at the beginning, so I'm just going to do it anyway. Jill Farmer, I'm a registered osteopath and a chartered ergonomist, and I've been specialising in office, agile and remote working for, a long time now, 20 odd years. So I know offices and I know the people in them. And obviously our offices have changed a hell of a lot in the last couple of weeks. I say I've been specialising in remote working for a long time, and it's become all the rage in the last few weeks. So we're going to talk about something that I know a lot about. A lot of you, so we're going to talk about partly about how to look after yourselves from an ergonomics point of view. When I say I'm an ergonomist, people always go, what's one of those? But if you say ergonomics, most people understand ergonomics, and it's looking at how you work and making it more comfortable. Most people think it's just the physical you, but it's not just the physical you, it's the psychosocial you. So all the stuff that you guys have already been talking about, stress is a huge precursor of aches and pains. So if you think about the amount of stress that we're all under at the moment, that's obviously going to lead to issues further down the line if we're not careful. If we then start sitting badly for the next few weeks, then we're going to be in a right old mess by the time this finishes. So we need to really start looking at that. Most of my clients are facilities managers, HR managers, office managers, and they've been running around like idiots for the last couple of weeks trying to get everything sorted. And it's only now that they're starting to think, well, this is all fine. But, when we're in an office environment, we have these DSE regulations that tells us everything that everybody should have in a standard office environment. But as soon as they go home, what on earth do we do with that? So I'm very pragmatic in my approach. I really believe that we need to not panic about this, not at all. There's some sensible, simple stuff that we can do, and it's more about advice really than anything else. You don't need specialist equipment, certainly not at this stage of the game. You know, a few weeks down the line, there might be some people that you're worried about, but right now, just some sensible stuff and changes in habits and changes in seating position can make an enormous difference. So that's really what we're going to look at. What I'm finding is, particularly my London clients, the people that are suddenly working from home, I mean, none of us have a perfect office setup at home unless you normally work from home. But say in London, they might not even have a kitchen table or a dining room table to work off. So a lot of people are working on the sofa, on the bed, and it's not a great environment. So we need to look at what we can do to make that better, because we can't give them an office environment. We can't create space for them to have a kitchen or dining room table. So what can we do? The most important thing to remember is that most of you are going to be working on a laptop, and the problem with a laptop, and it's really difficult for me to show it to you here, I have done a video and I'm more than happy to send it on to everybody. But the main issue with a laptop is that lack of separation. So you want to bring a keyboard nice and close, but you don't want your screen right in front of your face. And you want to take your laptop nice and high so that the top is level with your eyes, ideally, or slightly below. But you don't want your keyboard up here, because that's not going to cause you, that's not going to do you any favors either. You're going to end up hunching your shoulders. So the thing that we need to try and do, if we can, is separate out the keyboard and the screen. And the easiest way to do that is plug in a keyboard, plug in a mouse, and then physically raise up the screen. So this is my phone, but imagine if it was my laptop. As soon as you raise it to there, you sit completely differently to if it's down here. We're just leaning forward all the time, and that causes us problems in our neck and our shoulders. So if either you or your teams can get hold of a keyboard and a mouse, and a lot of my clients are allowing people into their offices to pick up their keyboards and mouse from work. Whether that's the right thing to do or not, I'm not quite sure. I'm sort of sitting on the fence a bit with that. But if you can get hold of a keyboard and a mouse for everybody, that will make an enormous difference. So plug in a keyboard, plug in a mouse, and then physically raise the laptop on something. It really doesn't matter what that is, a pile of books or a box, whatever it is that you can do to create that separation. The other thing that you have in a standard office environment is you have a chair that's got all sorts of adjustments on it. One of the main adjustments is height, and obviously you're not going to have that at home on your kitchen table, kitchen chair. But we can adjust the height of your chair using these things here. I have lots of these at home. A cushion or a pillow, pop it under your bottom, and that will raise you up. And you're looking to be high enough so that you're not hunching your shoulders to get over the keyboard. Once you get yourself in that position, because you've already sorted out your laptop with a plug-in keyboard and plug-in a mouse, then just make sure that the chair is doing the work. So get yourself, yes, you've guessed it, another one of these, and pop that into the small of your back. And then you should be in actually a reasonably comfortable position. If you then can't touch the floor with your feet, the temptation is to think, oh no, I'm too high, this is not going to work for me. But actually what you need to do is stay at that height and then create yourself a footrest out of a box or a pile of books, same sort of thing, so that your knees are level with your bottom. And then you're pretty much replicating an office environment. But as I say, particularly in London, a lot of people don't even have that sort of situation. So you could well find yourself or your team sitting on the sofa or the bed. It's exactly the same solutions that I would look at. You're not going to be plugging in a keyboard or a mouse, or possibly a mouse if you sat on the sofa or a bed, but you're certainly not going to be plugging in a keyboard. So what you need to do is raise the laptop on something so it's a little bit closer to the right height for your eyes. So again, it's cushions and pillows under your laptop. It makes an enormous difference. And also make sure that you've got support in the small of your back. Cushions and pillows again, it really is that's all you need at home to get you comfortable for the next few weeks. And then if you're sitting on your bed, the same thing applies. Get a cushion or a pillow into the small of your back, pop a cushion or pillow onto your knee to physically raise your laptop. And then you can also put a cushion or pillow underneath your knees, and that will take the strain off the small of the back. So that is pretty much it. It's very, very straightforward. You really don't need to make this overly complicated. If you're running a team and you're concerned about them, then that's the first thing that I would do. Give them some general advice and then look at doing some risk assessments with them. As long as you've trained them adequately, they can do their own risk assessments at home, and then prioritize the people according to needs. So if you've got people that are already, that you know struggle at the best of times, even if with a perfect setup, if they struggle anyway, aches and pains or problems with their eyesight or anything else, and some people just do struggle, then you put them at the top of your list. And it might be that you need to give them some extra advice, or maybe you do need to buy them some excuse me, specialist equipment. But generally, most people should be fine for the next few weeks if you just take on board a bit of pragmatic advice. But a bit like has already been said, the most important thing is move, 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 move. Honestly, you can ignore everything I've said for the last 5 minutes. As long as you move, really, truly, just keep moving, at least 5 minutes every hour. So go and kick the cat, put the washing in, whatever you need to do, but just keep moving. I say I've prepared a video that explains that a lot better. It's quite difficult to do just explaining that over the phone for you today. More than happy to send that on, more than happy to give advice if anybody wants anything else. But yeah, hope that helps.
Thank you so much. Yes, I mean, if there's any resources that you guys want to share, I will be sending a follow-up email to this, so I can include that into that email. Just to kind of, I know we've had a few people leave. I've added everyone's Nimisha, Tiaba's, and Jill's LinkedIn profiles into the chat, so please do connect with them or follow them if you'd like to hear more about what they're up to. I've added also the links to all of our upcoming webinars. I realized I didn't even introduce Ugenie and who I am. I assumed everyone knows what we do and who we are. But I'm very fortunate today that Nimisha, Jill, and Tiaba, who are 3 Ugenie community leaders. Ugenie is a private membership and community platform. Think about having your own LinkedIn for your brands. And these 3 women are leading 3 brilliant communities for us. And I've seen a lot of our leaders just come together and want to give back to our communities, which is what we're trying to do with these webinars. So thank you guys so much. Anyone who is here who wants to connect with them, like I said, it's there. If they're okay with it, I will also share their email addresses with the email that I send out, so anyone can get in touch with them one-to-one. And please do join us in our upcoming webinars. I mean, we're going to have a quite fun event on Friday night with another Ugenie community. We're doing a pub quiz. So, if you want to come along to something that's a bit more fun. Otherwise, we will be sharing more. Nimisha and I are also going to be doing another one coming up called Investing in the Future. It's a little bit touching upon what she spoke about today, but with more details to come. But yeah, thank you all so much for coming. I'll open the floor up. I know I just wanted to do kind of a goodbye and wrap up just in case other people needed to leave. But of course, if anybody wants to stay behind and ask any questions, I can stick around, and I'm not, if the other experts can stick around for a few minutes, we can answer some questions. But again, thank you so much for joining us today. Any questions for anybody? Observations?
I just wanted to say, even though Jill, I know all those things about, the heights and stuff. I mean, I actually have my computer on 2 gardening books and a big, thick board game. So I'm unaware of it, but just going to get myself a footrest, which I don't have. So that's really important. So I've been writing some things down.
Oh my God, yes. Mine's on top. My laptop's on top of another laptop right now because I'm sitting on a sofa, and and then it's getting really hot, which is not helping the whole like Wi-Fi and slowness issue. So I really do need to set myself up. I mean, my husband is still working from the office, but he's set up like a room for himself, which I should just be using because he's actually created an office space. I don't know. I feel myself punching over, like Jill's saying.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. We all do it. We do all do it, but just don't do it all day, every day for the next few weeks. Otherwise, you will be in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any final thoughts? Anything that you'd like to leave us with? Because I think you're so right in that. I mean, right now it's almost like we're reverting to the early, for us as well. Thinking about we're all small startup land. We have to do everything, right? We have to do everything from like clean the office to do the books and stuff. But it is about taking us outside of our traditional roles and seeing, can my developer actually design my screens as well, because he knows how that experience works. But even beyond that, I love what you had to say today.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mean, Susan knows this. I think I think also on a higher, not higher, but like on a more global perspective. And when you kind of look at what is really going on in the world today, you know, there's so many references around, 10 years ago or 20 years ago, we were all being asked to work from home, and we always said it was impossible, right? And it was really interesting. I was talking to an economist today who said, well, pandemics create necessity. And I was like, huh, okay, that's a really interesting statement. But it couldn't be more true. We keep getting pushed and tested to our limit, but I think it's a very beautiful opportunity for all of us who are on this call as business owners to really rethink the way we do business and how we structure these businesses and how we really utilize all the resources that are around us in this limited capacity. And actually, let's even remove the word limited. I don't really think we're limited. I've worked on projects personally because we were working in a remote capacity. We had more access to talent because we could work with people in completely different parts of the world because we had set up the business in a way to allow them to do that. So again, it goes back to a lot of what Susan was talking about tools. We're in a very fortunate situation in our society at this time that actually we can work from home. If you were talking about this maybe 20, 25 years ago, the entire world would have come to a complete standstill. So we're in a very, I like to think, opportune moment where whether we're a small, medium, or large enterprise, we really have an interesting time to reshape the way we do business. And it speaks to our next webinar. I'm really excited to talk about that, which is very much to all those points. So if you guys have questions around specifically how do you want to structure your business so that you can leverage that, Susan shared our email, so feel free to reach out. But I think it was a really good webinar.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for coming. I'm going to leave you on one final note, and then Fame's preparing dinner, and I realize I haven't eaten today, so I'm going to sign off. But I think the one thing is also about the planet needs to reset, and us not all traveling and using some of the carbon kind of footprint that we've created. I know, Nimisha, you do a lot of work with sustainability, and I love it. And it's the idea that even right now, I've seen startups come together so that instead of having 2 deliveries, they're coming together to put their products together in 1 delivery. How can we also use this as an opportunity to, I think our planet is fighting back right now. Chiaba?
Can I just end with one final thing as well? This is a very unique time in history for what's going on out in the world, but it's also a very unique time in history for us. So it's really important, as well as all of those things, to self-reflect, to see what's worked for us, who do we reach out to, who reached out to us, what are we looking forward to, what do we value the most, who do we miss, what needs to change for us once this is over. Because it is, I love disruption. It's a horrible situation, but turning everything on its head. What's unique in it for you? Ask yourself that. What do you want to change, and how do you want to, what are the lessons for you, I guess, at the end of the day? It's unique for you, your personal history as well.
Yeah. But one really quick thing, and I know Susan and I talk about this all the time, is that it's so fascinating to see that this situation has driven one really beautiful thing, and that's community. Whether we're virtual or physically around each other, the outpouring of connection and how resilient we are as people is really down to the communities that we're forming, whether they're around business or parents or kids or PE or training or cats or whatever it is. But if there's one thing we can take away from this, I think communities make us extremely resilient, and that's a big part of how we're going to go forward. So yeah, it's a really exciting time.
Great. Well, I hope everyone has an amazing evening. Thank you for joining us, and hopefully see you at Pub Quiz on Friday, or if not, at another one. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be, the winner gets a Deliveroo vouchers, which is very relevant right now. So I shall see you all soon.
All right. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Susan.
No problem.
All right. Bye.